Howard.
Well, first and foremost, I'd say they're exceptionally poor at picking the right candidates for election. No, just kidding. Certainly, if the teachers themselves feel like that the best option is to have that negotiating capability and that bargaining unit, I don't have a problem with that. But we also need to remember that the Board of Education is the organization that they're bargaining with. So there are lots of organizations that have 3,000 employees that don't have to have a union. They don't have to have representation. If we're saying as the Board of Ed, they need to have representation to get good working conditions and to get adequate pay, what we're saying as a Board of Education is we're inadequate in giving them good working conditions and adequate pay. So to me, it's a little bit of an odd situation. I wouldn't want to admit that we're a lousy employer and therefore need to be monitored, negotiated with, or really, in some cases intimidated into doing the right thing. The reality is we should be able to do that with or without a union. That said, I think union representation is fine. It brings some important issues to light. I think, unfortunately, it's important to recognize that, like lots of organizations, the union is a membership organization. So it's not necessarily about getting the most that they can get for teacher pay because they have to worry about headcount. And the fact that all the unions negotiate together, which means that we can't address the issue of teacher compensation without giving every administrator and every support person comparable increases, says we will never be able to use our resources for the most important thing, which is getting the compensation in the classroom up. So I have my differences with them. As a Board of Ed member, though, I would certainly work with them. I think it's important to hear people out, whether you agree with them or disagree with them. I was supported by the union when I was a candidate for commissioner, went out, fought, got a lot of funding for education. Then there were certain things I did that apparently, caused that to come into question. Be that as it may, the most important thing is, as a Board of Ed member, I would want to make sure that working conditions and compensation were good, so whether the union was there or not, it wasn't ever necessary, but it could be a good addition for the teachers to have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Howard.
Well, first and foremost, I believe the Board of Education needs to start looking from a budgeting standpoint and a planning standpoint in the world of reality. Comparing to other jurisdictions is fine when we're talking about recruiting and things that we need to stay within a certain range, but the problem is when we get into these discussions about things that are just not financially viable, we end up not making decisions. And to say that we want to bring everybody along is fine and it sounds good, but what it really means is we're not willing to make the decisions about what things are most mission critical. In any organization, certain things are mission critical. In a hospital, it's a doctor. In the military, it's the soldier in the field. In education, it's the teacher in the classroom. Now, it doesn't take away from all the other things that go to support that go to make that able to do what they do. But at the end of the day, if the teacher and the student interaction doesn't result in education, what are we doing this for? So at the end of the day, first and foremost, we need to get that Me Too clause taken out, or we need to at least start from the premise that we're going to get teacher compensation back in line first. If it causes some other groups to have to follow behind, that's going to have to be the way it is. The fact is we can say we value everybody equally, but we don't pay that custodian the same that we pay a principal anyhow. There is a huge disparity already. So either we're going to pay everybody the same, or we need to recognize there are different roles in the organization. Well-paid teachers will drive education, and that will drive the system. I never want to see an excellent teacher leave the classroom because the next best raise for them is to become an administrator. We have great administrators, and that's a talent in and of itself. But I want great teachers that are passionate about teaching to have every financial reason to stay in that classroom to the very last day of their employment. That's not the way our system works now, and partly it's because of the structure that we have with the negotiating agreements, having to do everything together and not being able to identify what's most mission critical. Anybody not willing to make those decisions is not going to get us where we need to be as a Board of Education.
Okay, thank you.